So, I see a lot of comments on movie reviews and trailers about movies and shows being preachy nowadays, about woke agendas and DEI. And it got me to think, is media losing its subtlety? The answer to that is complicated. It's a yes and no situation that requires more nuance than just has Hollywood gone woke. In order to answer that, I need to break it down into three parts: wokeness in media, DEI in representation, and finally, subtlety and media literacy. Let's start with the common dog whistle: wokeness. Folks, wokeness isn't real, it's just normal empathy. Nobody's, and I know I'm going to alienate a lot of people by saying that, but it's true. Caring about others isn't bad and won't make life worse for you. But teaching empathy is hard because it requires you to think about other people and how your actions make others feel. It requires self reflection and accountability. And that in turn requires that your own personal pride be put aside, something that these days seems to be harder and harder for people to do. And I know it's difficult to look at it and see that, but it's true. Empathy is really important because, and it's not just, oh, I understand what this person is going through, but it allows you to connect with stories in a way that you wouldn't normally do because you're able to pull yourself out of your own personal bubble and step into someone else's. I can't state how important empathy is when you discuss movies, when you discuss script writing and story writing and book reading. It's like the number one key thing that you need to have in order to have, well, media literacy. In order to understand what you are watching and reading and seeing, you have to be able to relate to it, to empathize with it. And then there's DEI and representation in movies. Now, I've spoken briefly about this in one of my shorts, the video discussing Tu Wong Fu and other gay movies. And I've seen a few other videos about talk about this as well, but DEI isn't actually what people have a problem with. It's shoehorned or forced DEI. When a character is shoved in and has no personality besides, I'm here to make this box ticked. And that's something everyone can agree on. Forced diversity is no longer helpful to the communities it's trying to benefit. And this is a difficult topic for me because, as a member of the LGBT community, our representation in movies was considered scandalous or avant garde for decades. Again, this was a controversial movie back in the 50s. Nowadays, or back then, it was useful only as a joke or to identify untrustworthy people. That's why so many Disney villains back in the early 90s and 80s were so queer. Now, I've been trying to keep this channel and this video in particular apolitical. However, I must acknowledge that the discussion of representation in DEI, there's a faction that doesn't want any characters to be diverse and instead prefers to have them erased for various imaginary reasons. This is wrong. DEI is not your enemy, and that mentality is divisive and unhelpful to us as a society. Poor representation is still representation, but in the year of our Lord 2026 now, poor representation is no longer enough. We need these characters to have more than just one personality trait and to actually make sense in the story. You know, there's no reason to force diversity. it's no longer enough to have the boxes ticked. Because nobody actually wants DEI inserts. They want actual people, things that they can relate to, actual characters that we can love and connect with, not who are there to appeal to the mathematically widest audience possible. And that is a key point here. These DEI inserts, these characters that only have one point in stories, they're there to appeal to as many different people as possible, but only on the surface. These characters don't have any major plot points, or if they do, it's intrinsically tied with the fact that they're gay or a lesbian or like women or are black or any one of these ridiculous methods of shoehorning and pigeonholing people. Just let characters exist for the sake of the story. If you want to show that your characters are inclusive, that's fine, but make it a tiny bit. Unless your whole story is something like a coming out tale or a movie about finding love in unexpected places, that would be perfect. Mamma Mia is an excellent movie for that. Mama Movie is a silly little romantic musical about a daughter getting married to a kid who doesn't want to, well, to a guy. He's like 22 or 23 in the movie. And at the end of the movie, one of the mother's three suitors, one of the daughter's potential fathers, ends up falling in love with a guy. And it's such a tiny little throwaway point. It doesn't matter to the sake of the movie, but it's perfectly done. Because all throughout the movie, you could tell that this guy was slightly different, not quite the same. And you could tell that he was not very committed. But then it kind of all circles back around and you understand why. It's important to do it right. It's not enough anymore to just shoehorn a couple gay characters in there and be done with it. And this is obviously not including movie or TV shows like Heated Rivalry, which is good, but also interesting that it's as popular as it is. But it also includes things like Lightyear. Lightyear's a perfect example. Lightyear has a lesbian couple in it. I've seen Lightyear. Lightyear's good. It's better than people give it credit for, but it came out at an awkward time, so people didn't really like it as much as they should have. Lightyear has a lesbian couple that is relatively important to the story, but they don't make it obvious. It's not really that big of a deal other than, oh, this is just who I love, which is how it should be. Nothing wrong with that. Finding Dory, I'll use another Disney example. Finding Dory had, I'm not kidding you, a pair of lesbian humans pushing a child at the aquarium. And the fact that they were hugging each other, people got upset over. They had literally no aspect of the movie. They were background characters that happened to make an appearance, and that's it. DEI is not your enemy. Having all of these other people are just people you are going to encounter in life. The people that have a problem with that are the people that are scared by them. And there's no reason to be scared. None of these people are scary. Most of these people just want to live their life. Yeah, you're going to have some bad actors, but you'll have bad actors everywhere. It's nothing new. And the problem with forced DEI inserts is they're obvious. It's obvious why you're inserting this character in here. Live action remakes are really, really bad about this. And I'm looking at you again, Disney, because you're the one that did this. I have no problem with stories that build on fairy tales. Um, Cinderella's been redone hundreds of times by all manner of different people. The Wizard of Oz and The Wiz are two perfect adaptations of L. Frank Baum's book, The Wizard of Oz. But it didn't matter that in The Wiz, Dorothy is played by Diana Ross, because they're not the same movie. But Disney casting um, Ariel with a different skin tone, objectively shouldn't have been a big deal, realistically. It's a movie about a mermaid. Mermaids aren't real, despite what people may think, and there's nothing wrong with that. But they it's like they were trying to capture an audience that they didn't have originally, and rather than doing that by say having more characters like Tiana or Moana that had actual stories tied to their culture, you remade a Danish fairy tale with an African American actress who I don't have anything against. And to be honest, I didn't think the movie was that terrible, but it's a remake and therefore I don't like it. But that has nothing to do with the actress or anything like that. That has everything to do with the fact that it's nostalgia bait that's capitalizing on our need to feel like everything's okay. But that's for a different video. But all of this ties into my final point in this discussion, and that's about media literacy and subtlety as a whole in our modern age. And this is an interesting final point. First, let me define what media literacy is. Media literacy is the ability to identify and comprehend topics in media consumed. It allows you to identify things like ethics and morals and identify what your plot points are. It's important for literally every amount of story comprehension. And it feels like it's dying out. Now, I can identify a big portion of it right now. Some of it is TikTok and shorts and reels sapping our attention span with an algorithmically perfect series of videos designed to keep you scrolling and never leave. The constant hunt for dopamine, like a starving person hunting for scraps in a dumpster, leaves you scrolling without actually thinking about what you're seeing. And this is intentional from both and documented both through medical studies and through leaks from those responsible companies. And it's it's important to talk about in this aspect because that attention span drop means that you lose people faster. There was a phrase, blink and you lose them. And that perfectly codifies everything that has happening to movies these days. It's movies are no longer being movies and media are no longer things that you have to stop and think about, that you have to engage in. It's all right, cool, that's over, on to the next thing. And everything has to be eye catching and fast, or your audience moves on. And that means that morals and ethics and plot points have to be painfully obvious or hammered at through the whole plot repeatedly because you have to try and claw back some of the attention that you may have lost in your audience. And nothing can be more focused on that than in a lot of uh, perfect example, Falcon and the Winter Soldier, a show that was basically panned across the board for being preachy and you know self-indulgent. I didn't dislike the show. It wasn't my target. I loved a lot of the characters that are in it, and I thought it dealt with a very humanizing aspect to it. But you kind of that was kind of the whole point. It's humanizing characters that are by definition supposed to be superheroes. Now, I don't have a problem with that. I think that superheroes should be humanized. It helps to relate to them and show kids that like, hey, yeah, that may be Superman, but you too. You can be Superman too by just being kind to your community, helping out where you can. That's what really matters, etc. and so forth. But I mean, in the end, it's not entirely our fault. Our addiction to dopamine isn't something that we can truly control. And it's been weaponized against us to keep us coming back so effectively that most people don't even recognize it for what it is. Control. You are the product. You've always been the product. But no, you're not imagining it. Movies have been getting preachier, but the problem that causes it, the underlying issue, is much bigger. I don't have a solution to this. I don't have a way to make it right or to prevent it from being an issue. The only thing I can say is engage. Not with the short form videos, though, as I have to say, short form videos have their point, but you do have to step away, engage with reading. You listen to audiobooks. I know there are some people that don't consider audiobooks reading. Don't listen to them. Audiobooks are reading because I know there's a lot of people that struggle to sit with a book. One of my best friends has severe ADHD and can't sit and read. He's tried it over and over and over again. So I sent him to the library and he picked up some audiobooks and he has been voraciously reading them. And there was a moment he came to me and said, "This isn't reading. I feel bad. I feel like I'm cheating." And I kind of had to turn around and go, "It's still a book. So you're listening to someone else read to you. Who cares? If it's if it works, then I see no reason why it should be a problem." And in the end, the only thing I can say is if you want movies to stop being so preachy, pay attention to them. And eventually the problem will sort itself back out. Well, my friends, stay tuned and let me know what you think of this more long form content. I've been tossing around the idea of doing this, but I will if this does well because I like this. This is fun. Ciao.